Oh, where to start? Okay. On May 16th, the Speaker made a number of really concerning allegations against Minister Harrison. At that time, we heard from the Premier that these accusations were unequivocally false, that he never brought a gun into the legislature. A few days ago, the Minister talked to media and put out a statement saying that there was an incident about 10 years ago when he brought a gun into the legislature, but it was with the prior knowledge of the Sergeant-at-Arms. We now know from a leaked document that there are a number of lies beyond the first lie, the first denial of this from the minister, that this incident didn't happen on a weekend. It happened during the week. This was an incident that happened just a year after the shooting on Parliament, to set the context. And we know that the Legislative Assembly, the Sergeant-at-Arms staff, were scrambling as they saw an unidentified person in fatigues walking into the legislature with a gun. As you can imagine, there was no prior knowledge, as we see in the leaked document, by the Sergeant-at-Arms. And again, this is a minister that has lied, has either lied to the Premier, or the Premier has been complicit with the story that this minister has been telling. And this is a minister, very simply, needs to be kicked out of cabinet, needs to be kicked out of caucus. And this is a moment for the Premier to show some leadership. And if he doesn't do that, if he doesn't kick Jeremy Harrison out of cabinet and out of caucus, I think that says a lot about Scott Moe's leadership, and it doesn't say anything good about it. I think that's all I have to say. I'm happy to take questions.
What do you say to Minister Harrison's argument that this is just a description of the incident that he was already talking about?
I think that there are some very significant inconsistencies, and maybe there are at least 6 inconsistencies from what he said and what we now know to be true from this incident report. These are not minor inconsistencies. First of all, suggesting that the Sergeant-at-Arms knew about this, knew that he was bringing a gun into the building, or he had some sort of authorization. That's a patent lie. We know that this was very disturbing to the Sergeant-at-Arms staff, you can imagine. He suggested that this happened on a weekend when there weren't very many people in the building. Well, we know that not to be true. This happened just after the election in 2016. It happened on a weekday. And again, you know, the minister has been caught again, red-handed in a lie. This has to be it. The Premier needs to show some leadership here. And as I said last week, just a few short days ago, any political differences aside, we can't have difference on the need for elected officials to be honest and forthright. And again, the minister's been caught in a lie.
Okay. Sorry, I'm just wondering about, have you heard from the Speaker yet about your call for that House Services Committee to resume?
I have not heard from the Speaker. Let's see if there's been any communication. I understand, again, you know, the Premier suggested, sure, maybe there should be an investigation, and now they've denied that investigation. The people of this province deserve so much better than this. This is a minister who has lied, who has shown terrible judgment, and instead of being forthright with the people of this province, has put on a fabrication, lied again, lied in writing, lied on camera. The Premier simply, I think, does not have a choice here. This is a question of his leadership, and this minister needs to be gone, both from cabinet and from caucus.
Aside from the lie part, what do you think about how Mr. Harrison nearly caused a security alert?
Yeah.
You know, he walked in,
yeah.
The security officer was about to say if there's a gun in the building. What do you think about that aspect?
Well, I think that When it happened is also significant. Remember, this is just a year, a little bit over a year after the shooting on Parliament. There was heightened security. We saw a number of security measures come in. And this minister, this is his judgment, wearing fatigues, I imagine a hat, but I don't know if that's the case, walking in with a rifle into the legislature. On that alone, that shows an appalling lack of judgment. And again, it's not that the Sergeant at Arms staff had prior knowledge of this. So he just walks in the building with a gun and now chooses to lie about it on a number of occasions. I mean, it shouldn't even be a question. I hope it's not a question for the Premier.
He suggested it would have been worse for him to leave it in his car.
Yeah. Well, I can't imagine that having the chance to look back on this, that's what he comes up with. Again, no one buys it. He could have locked the door. He has a home in Regina. He could have left the gun at home. There's a number of options that he had, including telling the truth. But he seems to be incapable of doing that.
Any last questions? Thank you, Carla.
Thanks, everyone.